And we're live. Greetings, scribblers. What's up? We got a bunch of people here already. Hello, Don, Richard. Hello, Hannah. What's up? Jared, Charlotte. We got a full house. How's everybody doing? And I'm here with Bethany V, PR Ranger Writing, also known as Danny Ranger, and the lovely Z Falk. And we're here tonight to talk about how to get started with typewriter maintenance.
Yeah.
Right.
3L lesson.
I forgot the thing. Something about writing. Oh, yeah. How to get started as a writer. That's what it was. I remember now.
Very
good topic. Good stuff. Does anyone really know how to write, though? Let's be honest. Aren't we all just faking it till we make it?
How would you know if you were faking it? That's my question.
I don't know.
Hey,
There's some days where...
You're right.
Oh, well, I was just going to say there are like some days where I feel like two toddlers just stack on top of each other wearing a trench coat, and I'm like not sure if I'm the top half or the bottom half sometimes. Am I really echoey?
Yeah, Lloyd, I think I've found that like writing is not just writing, it's actually like crafting. That's one thing I've learned. There's a tip straight off the bat. It's not just writing, it's crafting and arting.
But what's interesting is when you first get started, you don't see it as craft. You're a reader first, right? So you're reading your favorite book and you're thinking, man, I wish I could tell a story like that. But you don't really see the nuts and the bolts and the, what do you call this thing? Joists and all stuff building up the piece of art that makes it work. So it's really hard to see in the beginning. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight is when you're first getting started as a writer and you have no idea what you're doing, what should you be focused on? So maybe we could just take a second and go around the world here and talk about how you got started writing and what made you kind of stick with it instead of fade away like most people that try it. Bethany, go.
Well, okay, so wait, what are we talking about? Why we started writing and what made us stick with it?
Yeah, I'm hard to understand. I understand.
No, okay.
Yes.
Why I started writing, I have very weird dreams, and I was like, someone out there is going to enjoy these. And I had this wonderful epic story in my head for like a high sci-fi fantasy. And I was like, I can write this, no problem, no experience, it's fine. And for like the first 6 months of my writing life, I just struggled figuring out what worked for me and what didn't. So I tried not plotting, and then I tried over plotting, and then I just knew that there was like something in there that like I just wasn't figuring out. And eventually I found my style, like my own voice, how I plotted effectively. I'm not an over plotter or an under plotter, and I figured out I'm an underwriter, and I just figured out what I can do well and what works for me. And then the story started to come easier. But for like the first year, I just spent time figuring out what my style was, writing all of the genres to figure out what was great. And I just never stopped because I knew that people would enjoy my stories, but I had to figure out how to tell them better first. And I'm to that point where I'm like, okay, people can read these now. But man, that first year, you just write a lot of garbage, and that's okay.
What do you think, Danny?
I got a lot of damn good stories in me. I just needed a way to get them out there.
Well, Danny's a weird example, though, because I'm always telling everybody when you first get started, what you write is going to really stink. But somehow Danny managed to come out of the gate and write a pretty good story right off the bat, which is really weird. Which actually could kind of suck because after you wrote one really good one and then you write your next one and the next one doesn't like hit the home run, you could get really discouraged. But it kind of depends on who you've got around you and who's like encouraging you.
Look, I've had plenty of experience sucking at stuff. So, keyword, at. And I feel like I love stories that have an ending that leave you saying, what just happened? That blow your mind and they can't leave you. And I think I can do that. I have stories like that in my head that I could put out there in the world. how do I do it? Well, the best way and the most affordable way to do it is to just write them. So that's what got me into writing. But see, I was writing stories when I was young. The last story I wrote before I started writing again was in 2005. So I would have been 17. I'm 32 now. I started writing again 2 years ago. And I wrote Secret Santa, the story that Kent was talking about. I wrote that December 2018 because of a real life experience that happened, and I figured I could make a story out of this, and that's how that came about. So for 2 years, no one read it.
Really? It just sat? You just let it sit? You just let the story sit? Did you do any editing?
I figured I was going to do something with it because, like, my son was born in 2016. He's 4 years old now. I had a keen interest in building computers. So what I was doing, writing the story, trying to get something good down on paper, I decided to step away from that and pursue this passion for wanting to build a computer. And then I built 10,000 gaming computers and sold them to people who just didn't have enough money to go and buy one brand new. And did that for the last couple of years. It's only within like the last 6 months that I gave up on that and decided to really hook back into writing again. So on and off.
Word.
10,000?
So you're rich or what?
More like 9,994. But
okay, so you were lying, is what you're saying.
I mastered it. I got as good as I could with it, and I was like, okay, now what?
So I was just reading Benjamin's comment. No matter how long you've been writing, every new story is an experiment. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. You only know once you've written it. That is true. But hopefully we're going to talk about tonight a couple of ways that you can be a little bit more sure that what you're writing isn't going to completely suck. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do tonight. It's kind of anybody that's just a beginner can maybe watch this later and get a couple of tips for maybe not starting out of the gate smelling like a dumpster fire.
I'm curious to know how Z got into writing.
Just always wrote as soon as I could write, and then just never stopped. So yeah, nothing exciting, no grand story or anything. Just always wrote.
For as long as you can remember.
Yeah, as long as I could write. I was really keen to start writing stories as soon as I could write, and then I've just kept going.
Yeah.
Is it kind of mixed up with your artwork? Because I always feel like those things are kind of intertwined.
That's more of a later addition. So I didn't start drawing characters until a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And that was a conscious choice because I wanted to integrate an Instagram and write on Tapas as well, which is primarily comic rather than novels. So I was trying to steal some of the comic audience over to my novel, basically.
That's good.
How many novels have you written?
Complete novels, or God, maybe 4 or 5. They're really bad.
A lot.
That's good.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Got lots of false starts and like abandoned ones.
Oh, I've got a few of those too. When I say a few, I mean, I don't want to talk about it. So I basically started writing when I was a little kid. Wasn't a lot of TV, video games, anything like that in my life. I didn't have a TV till I was 14. So the only way to keep myself busy was the library and comic books. So that's what I did is I read all the time. So it was kind of a natural thing to start doing it myself, drawing comics and writing. And I actually wrote my first book when I was 10. I wrote it in cotton gin records on my grandpa's farm by hand. And I've been doing it ever since then. But I went through adulthood and thinking you don't want to do risky things, for a living. And I kind of stopped doing it for a while. And then like 6 years ago, I started again. And I didn't just start again. I started doing it every day. And when I say every day, I mean literally every single day. And since then, I've written about 200 short stories, 6 full-length novels, and a novella. So, but like Danny, I was not telling anyone. I was not really sharing the fact that I was writing books with anyone. So I was literally accumulating a small library of me and not even finding out if it was good. And I was getting weird about it. Like I started studying psychology like Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell. And like I was really turning into a complete story nerd, but nobody knew, even family. And then something happened and someone read one of them and told me I was a nutcase. Well, they were telling me that already. They told me I was a nutcase not to share what I was writing. And I started thinking maybe I would like to be a writer. So I don't know what happened to make that lightning bolt strike and make me all of a sudden really just want to do that for a living. But now I'm hell bent for leather and I'm going to write till they nail my coffin lid shut. Which
I think there's like a threshold that everyone has of like, we have to write so many bad words and just garbage before we write something good. And then we're like, oh, wait, we can share this. But like, if you're still writing garbage, you just know you don't want to share that. And it just depends on how much garbage you write. Unless if you're like me, it takes you a year or two before you're like, okay, yeah, I can share this. If you're like Danny, first story, boom, it's a winner. So everyone's different.
Well, I'm telling you, the most important thing once you get started is just to keep going, because writing seems to be the only thing where people think, let's say suddenly you wanted to craft figurines. You wouldn't expect to be able to craft a figurine on your first try. You would need to potentially take a figurine crafting class or practice or get some materials, or I don't know why I use this as an example. But my point is that everybody expects to have a learning curve and then get good. But with writing, everybody puts that first thing out, hands it out to somebody to read it, and they go, you should do something else. So I don't know why writing's like that, where everybody thinks they have to be good right away, because you don't. But I think that it's really important to kind of accept that the first stage of your writing is going to be what it's going to be, and to seek to improve it.
I think that maybe part of the reason why people put such a huge amount of pressure on themselves to make the first draft bloody good is if they're reading a book, one of their favorite books, and they're thinking, all right, so I can write something like this. But when they're doing it and they realize they're not writing something that good, they start thinking, okay, I've got to be better than this. I've got to be better than this. Whereas I think it might be because you said like you're isolated. If you're at like you said, a figurine crafting class, you've got a bunch of people around you who are in the same situation who just want to learn. So perhaps that's part of the reason why people they give up. They just put too much pressure on themselves. They compare them to the wrong thing.
Yeah, comparison in the early stages is really dangerous. Don't do it.
Well, I have it's something I try to tell my son, my son James, is don't compare yourself to someone else right now. Compare yourself to how good you were at it yesterday. And I think that that's probably the only healthy way to progress in anything. Because of course I go read like a Hemingway short story or something, and just, he does something in 4 sentences that I can't get done in a chapter. So, and the words look so simple. Like that's a sentence.
It's the timing.
Do that. He wrote that he came to the river was there. Who thinks of that? But some people don't like it, but I do. But anyway, my point is, if I try to compare myself to Hemingway or one of these guys every day, especially when mainly my stuff is based on explosions, I would be sad all the time, and I wouldn't want to show up and write. What do you think, Z?
As you're taking a drink.
That's why I jumped. Stop laughing at me, Z. Not cool, man. Not cool.
What do you think of Hemingway?
I've never read Hemingway, but simplicity is quite it's an illusion, because it's sort of, I don't know, it looks really simple, but there's actually a lot of work going on behind the scenes. So, there's a huge amount of skill and simplicity, definitely.
That's a great point. There's a really famous quote. I can't remember who did it. He said, and it was in a letter, and he said, "I'm sorry I didn't have time to write a shorter note," which meant it's harder to say things simply. And Shakespeare said brevity is the soul of wit. And I just said it. So that's basically 2 famous guys saying it. So now you believe it. I stole that from Iron Man, just for the record. So I got another question. Are you ready?
Far away.
Everybody take a drink of something if you're ready. I'll wait. That's okay. There's people watching. Take your time.
I'm not going to go get a drink.
Your timing sucked on that, man. Okay. Yes. What do you think new writers should focus on? I don't know why I'm doing this. First.
Drawing inspiration from me, mate.
Dude, this stuff is just really how I am, and I'm sorry.
You're a TV presenter.
So
what was the question again?
Well, I want to hear you, Danny. So you better listen up, man. You better get that beard out of your ear, or whatever's in there. What do you think new writers, based on your experience, should focus on first? I just decided I want to write. I haven't written a dang thing yet. What should I do?
Routine. 100% get a routine in place first. Because usually people who want to write, like you say, have been reading books and feel like they can create something just as good or better. But people fail because they don't maintain their routine, and they step away from it for too long, like I did, and just lose interest in it. And that's really unfair to everyone else because they've got a great story there ready to be written. So I think if they were to look at routine, just to start off with, even if it's a routine where they research a few things before they start writing, but they still put that time aside every day, I think that would make a world of difference.
What do you think, Z?
Yeah, routine's really important. And you mentioned like losing motivation as well. I think it kind of starts there. So get excited about it. So like brainstorm lists about things you really love in stories or movies, and just get really excited about writing.
It definitely shows through your writing though. Like if you're excited about it, it's going to show in your writing. You're going to write some good stuff.
Yeah, readers are really perceptive. They'll see if you're into the writing or not. So it is important. Yeah.
So when you tell people the way to get excited is routine, sounds a little weird. Care to elaborate?
I think the reading side of things, like we'll put it this way. Let's look at it from my perspective. I work 45 hours a week, which is pretty standard. I have a son, 4-year-old son, married. I have other responsibilities that go along with that. So when I get to write, I'm excited. I'm excited that I get to write because it's me being creative. I've got all this creative energy built up throughout the day. I've been thinking about it since the moment I opened my eyes. I've been thinking about it while I've been at work calling customers. I just want to go home and I want to create something. That excitement, I think, falls in with the routine because I know at 9:30 at night, I'm going to get to experience that. Something to look forward to. My kid's pretty good too. Like, don't discount my son. He's all right. But yeah, talking from a creative perspective, that's where I think the excitement comes in, at least for me.
Personally, it took me a while to figure this out. Like, let your bad words be bad. You can go back, edit it, and fix it. But to finish something, which is something a lot of people have issues with, is I know a lot of people hate doing this, but I don't mind writing out of order. But if you really hate it, I still recommend have your ending 1 or 2 scenes. Know how you're going to end, because then you have a line in sight, you have an end goal, and you've already written it. You just got to get there. And that always helps me, like, okay, I know how it's going to end. I just need to connect the dots in the middle. And it's just exciting, kind of what Z said, that like excitement still is there, even though you're maybe in the rough parts of the middle and you're like, when is this going to end? You have that end in sight. So that's always helped me finish projects, is knowing the ending, and then I just write to it.
Dig it.
Thoughts? Yes or no? Some people hate writing out of order and they're like, can never do it. But if you're willing to give it a shot, it's helped me a lot.
If it jazzes you, you should do it. But I really like what Joseph put down here. I prefer momentum to routine. And this is the point that I was trying to kind of see if I could drag out of somebody, was that I don't think of it as routine. I think of it as to keep the ball rolling, because when it stops, and we were just before we came into streams talking to Danny, is like, I never recommend to anybody that you stop writing for very long, because starting back again, it's like you're carrying a 10-ton weight. There's something in the head that clicks when we're doing our writing every day. So, or whatever, however many days a week it is that you can do it. I'm not saying you have to do it every day, but I definitely believe that if you keep going, you keep going. And it's those days that you think that you want to stop. If you recognize that there's consequences to stopping, you're less likely to come up with all the silly excuses that we make and create to wreck everything for ourselves, because it sucks. It's hard to get good at something that's hard, and we can come up with a million excuses not to try. So the best thing in the world you could possibly do is just keep going.
Yeah, people don't see your 7 drafts to your final product. They
Don
just
had
don't
a
get it.
question a minute ago, and Don is a very new writer and a guy that's really looking to get started on the right foot. And he asked, what do you do? What do you write? The question is what to write. And I want to talk for a minute about, if we can, tips for coming up with story ideas, or where do you get your ideas? And do you have any tips for folks who need to come up with story ideas? Story idea generation.
Do we want to know where Secret Santa came from? That was a real life experience, right? I won't give away the ending, but when I left my first job, I got a love letter in the mail from someone, and I thought it was my coworkers playing a joke on me because I left. And when I was reading the letter, it's all loopy writing, you know. I watched you through school. I couldn't find you on Facebook. I couldn't find you on MySpace. I'm here to tell you now that I finally found you, and I love you. And I'm thinking, this is a prank. This is a prank. But it wasn't the guys that were at work that I worked with. I thought they were playing a prank, and it wasn't them. And then ensued like a mission with me and my friends trying to find who this person was that wrote it. And we never found them. And that happened, a long time ago, a long time ago. And back in 2018, I was thinking about it, and I thought, sometimes I think about things that have happened in my life and how interesting they would be if they just went one step further. And then that made me think about Secret Santa. I was like, righto, I'll turn this into a story and put an ending to it that I already had the ending in mind. So did Bethany's thing, had an ending there to write to, and then did it. And that's where that came from. But my other work in progress, Voice of the Broken, that came from a dream. I had a dream that I was the lead singer of a band. I had this very unusual guitar in my hand. I was in another world. There's all these weird people, like creatures and stuff in the audience, all going crazy over me. I had no idea what I was doing there. I had no idea what the heck I was supposed to sing. So I just started playing the guitar and singing, and the crowd loved it. And I woke up thinking, man, what a weird story that would be if you are over in a completely different world, like another dimension, and you are like in a singing contest or a performance contest of some sort. And I was like, that's got to become a story now. That's where I got that from. What about you guys?
Bethany?
Sure. I started out seriously writing and getting stuff published with short stories and flash fiction. And so flash fiction is like less than 1,000 words. You got to pack a punch. And so I think everyone in their life can kind of get little glimpses of like, that was really weird, or didn't see that coming. And so I started writing those. And I have a very unique family life. And so I just have a lot of unique characters. I've had a lot of strange experiences because my brothers are adopted. So that was like crazy in our very small town. And I started out that way. And then when I started writing bigger things, I did that whole comparison thing. And I was like, I'm not writing anything new. Any adventure story, Odysseus, like tragedy, like Death of a Salesman, Romeo and Juliet, they're all written. And I just had to do something that I wanted to read. And that's what I started with. And then I also travel a lot. So all of my settings comes from places I've usually rafted. So I craft my story around that. I know a lot of people do characters first, but for me, my characters come last. I kind of have to like set the scene and then watch them walk in type thing. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't remember the question. I hope that answered it.
I can see Kent's got like a serious question and brewing right there. Eh?
I have 90 things to say, but I really want to hear what Z has to say first. Z, where you come up with your stuff? You have some pretty original plot lines going on from what I've read.
Oh, thank you. Same as you two, just real life, and then you sort of work on the idea to put in like as much drama or as much tension as possible. So yeah, just from the world around you, basically.
So, being a complete dork, which I am, the way I would tell someone to come up with a story, the way I do it now, I would not tell beginners that haven't written a bunch of stories to do that. And here's why. So when you first start doing anything, everything that we learn how to do, I'm trying not to go full psychology nerd on you. We start mostly with modeling. We have some instincts, babies know how to do some stuff, but mostly we model our behavior. So really the best way to learn anything to start is by modeling. So I saw some people talking about fan fiction and stuff like that in there. There's no shame in that. It can be a great way to start. I didn't start by doing fan fiction, but what I did, that first little book I wrote when I was 10, I was reading Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern series, which is amazing. If you hadn't read it, go read it right now. Literally, you should leave this stream and go read it. And
don't do that.
I wrote a story about a kid who is in a plane crash and finds dragon eggs in the desert. And I basically copied a lot of the attributes and things about the dragons. I just knew I wanted to write about those things. And the story came out of that organically. But here's another thing. When you're a beginner, copy the hell out of your favorite people. If they wrote a story about X and you like it, you do it. Just do it your way. And if nobody ever sees it, who cares? You've written a story from beginning to end, and what you're doing is you're starting to feel the shape of a story. Like you're starting to understand why what that person wrote was so great for you. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands, but you really find out how to write by reading things and copying them to begin with, and there's no shame in it. So what I would recommend for people to do is copy some stuff. So one of the things I like to do still to this day is I take fairy tales and legends and things like that are kind of archetypical stories that are kind of embedded in human DNA. And then I try to what if the crap out of it? Well, what if it was the other way around? What if this was the bad guy and this was the good guy? What if the snake was the good guy in the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve were jerks? So if you start to play with that stuff as concepts, and then you can build a world around it. Like it doesn't even need to come. You could take a Greek tragedy and turn it into a modern story in a city. Too easy. Just take the basic elements of the story and write them down. And as you do, you're going to build up that muscle, and you're going to get better and better at understanding what a story is.
I used to write stories. So I used to write stories in school, and we used to write them about like people of TV, right? Me and my mates. And we used to just write stupid things. Like a character would walk in and say something like, "Why are you here?" And then the tag will be, "He squeaked." And then the next person would be like, "I'm looking for you. He thundered." We used to write the dumbest, weirdest stuff. I think maybe I got some of that terrible writing out of my system. But we weren't showing people. This is for our own laugh, like our own laugh. We knew it was bad. But maybe I got some of that out of my system when I did that.
Well, I think when you're like a young writer, don't get hung up on little things like that. Just write what you would want to read. That's kind of what I started with. And I enjoyed surprising people. So with like flash fiction, it's just so much fun because you can like set the tone for everything and you think you know how it's going to end, and then you just flip it on them. And that's just always fun. I like messing with people.
Me too. I got another question.
Go for it.
I can't read my own writing, so I'm just going to do it from memory. So you guys were talking about routines and momentum and stuff earlier. So say I've gotten started. I've written a few stories, and I want to get serious, and I want to build some kind of writing routine where I start producing something of, you know, some level of quality that I can start getting out in the world. How would I go about building those routines? Bethany?
Are you a morning person or an evening person? And
Yes.
then go from there. So for me, I get up and like the first hour and a half, 2 hours is my time. Set your phone down. Don't even look at emails. Get my coffee and I just write. Usually new words. And then my job is editing, so I look at other words. And then eventually I get an afternoon lull and I'll edit my own work. But every morning, first hour and a half to 2 hours, that's mine. And that's when I'm most creative. I'm not a night owl. I mean, like I have insomnia, but that's not my choice. And those words wouldn't be good. But I would just say, like, find your quiet, uninterrupted time and turn off your phone. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Is that there's always, like, put it this way, I don't particularly have a choice about when I write, because I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and about 5:30, Charlie's awake, my son. I'm doing everything with him in the morning, getting ready for work, go to work, come home, have a shower, and then it's dad time again. And my son's got speech delay, and he's got learning development issues. He's got emotional regulation issues. He's got a few issues there that we're working on every day. And once that's done, and he's in bed and he's asleep, and that could be around 8 o'clock at night, I feel like family's got to come first. Unless my wife's like, look, I'm just going to watch this TV show, go and write, or go and do whatever you want. Usually it's spend time with my wife, and then around 9:30, it's when I can come in here and I can start writing. So that's how that works for me. I remember watching Jerry Jenkins talking about time is something that you have to carve out for your writing. It's not something that will appear. You have to sacrifice something, or you have to carve it out of your schedule. For him, he went from 9 o'clock to midnight every single night. That was his schedule, because he put all of his family and all that first. So I took a bit of a page from that. I give myself an hour when I'm writing. I try to write 1,000 words in that hour. And generally, because of that, because of the schedule, because of the routine and aiming for 1,000 words, I can get it done. But that's how I got to the end of my first draft in that last bit, thanks to being pushed by a certain person who's not too far away. And that's what I learned just from that push.
How do you fit it in, Dave?
Badly. I always leave it last, because if I know there's like a deadline, I have to like finish by a certain time to go somewhere else. It distracts me, so I always leave it at the end of the day. But by the end of the day, I'm quite like slow. So yeah, it's quite slowly.
Well, let me tell you, I don't just think that the writing habit is about when you write every day. I mean, obviously it is a lot about when you write every day, but I think that it's really important to pick a project. Once you've passed kind of the stages we talked about when we were starting, is to pick a project and get it done. I think that's how you build a writing habit. You build a habit that is, I start something, develop it, edit it, finish it, and move on. And in that way, it gives you things to look forward to, new projects to discover, new things, and you have something tangible to hold in your hand for all this work. If you're always just nibbling at things here and there, and I know there's some people that work on 3-4 projects at the same time, and I don't know what you're doing, but still, if you focus on finishing things and tell yourself, I need to be done by now. I know Z mentioned deadlines, and good on you. But set some deadlines for yourself. Make it a real thing that has to be done at some time. And I think that all of a sudden you will start finding the time to write. And like Danny says, and this is like, I probably said this like 50 times in videos and live streams, but I'm going to say it again, is if you say you don't have time to write, you need to audit yourself, and you need to think about all the other stuff that you're doing that isn't writing. And if any of that is video games, Super Mario Kart, watching reruns of The Big Bang Theory, or playing Clash of Clans on your phone, you're prioritizing all those things over writing. So if that's the case, you need to ask yourself if those things really are more important, because they'll suck your time away and they'll suck your energy out and they give nothing back. So I would just tell people, there is time to write. Put some pressure on yourself. Tell yourself you got to get done. Then all of a sudden, things might open up to you and you might realize that, man, it's really way cooler to hold something in my hand that I've written a story that's complete than it might be to get, I don't know, like 60 castles on the game on my phone.
I think there's also another thing as well. Like my brother, my nephews, they play they play video games. They play Xbox Online. They play Fortnite, that sort of stuff. And I think there is an element of the, you know, I always play online with my friends and that sort of thing. I think if you really are like really serious about writing, you really want to produce something, then you might have to say to them, at least, you know, this number of nights a week, I won't be on. I'm focusing on this. And allow yourself to give time to yourself, just yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
I was waiting for you to finish.
I just
When
stopped
do you
there.
write?
Angie, tell them about your writing habit. How many words you get a session?
Depends on how I'm feeling per day. Like if I'm not feeling that up to it a day, it's like 200 or 300. But when I'm really into it, it can be like, I got to 1,000 once.
That's pretty good.
Stop
So-
showing
That's
off.
really good.
Angie's writing her first novel at 12. So we'll see what happens. Probably she's sick of hearing about writing from me.
Good though. You got like a built-in critique partner. That's the way it should be.
No, she is way too harsh. I'll never let her be a critique partner.
Don't hurt his feelings.
You should see what it's like to try to make a YouTube video with her directing me. I have to do everything
Mikey's
50
life
times.
hard.
Not
Mikey's
50
life hard.
times.
Never good
I'm
enough.
just saying, you have to do it more than once for good measure.
It's true. Are you available? I need to hire someone.
Have you seen my videos? I really need your help, Angie.
That's what I was
Really?
just saying.
Help with what?
You'll be my critiquer for videos. I'll send them through to you and you can tell me if they suck or not.
You don't know what you're asking, dude. You have no idea what you're getting into.
I need a director.
Oh, by the way, Z, Angie's just started doing drawing on her, whatever that thing is.
my
So it looks a
laptop.
lot like what you're doing. We're going to go
awesome.
check out some of your stuff.
Oh, that's so good.
Angie, this nice lady right here, her name is Z. That's not really her name, but we call her Z because she's cool. She's like a rock star, you know.
Yes.
Anyway, Sting was not his real name, just for the record. But her drawing is freaking amazing. She probably got some tips for you.
Oh, I'd love some tips, some artist tips. I'm a writer and an artist, you know.
That's so great. That's
Sometimes
awesome.
me and my brother make comics. Yeah, like superhero comics. We make our own superheroes, and 2 of them we actually act out in real life.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
You hijacked my live stream. You know that, right?
Someone wrote she's going to be doing a TED Talk in like 3 years. I don't know what that means, but thanks.
Okay. Okay, my little movie star. Go somewhere and do something. Say bye.
Draw a comic.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh. She's 12, going on 37. You coming, Boom? I think Jamesy's been peeking. He wants to come and say hi. But yeah, man. Let me tell you, everybody that says it's so hard to get started, and she outlined and is completing a novel systematically and regularly. So it can be done at 12, and I'm not making her do it. Come on, dude. One more. Sorry. Jamesy, also known as Bat James.
Bat James.
Hello.
Their heads are as big as mine. Is that weird?
Do
Smart
your
kid.
Bat James voice.
Dab. So yeah, it can be done. And I think kind of seeing how simply Angelina approaches it, I told her, well, honey, you need to figure out what the story's going to be, get an idea of what you want to say, what's fun about it, and then just do it. And she just did it because she didn't have any hangups or fear. There was nothing holding her back from just doing it. And I think that that's probably another good piece of advice for new writers, is to just do it and not ask you. The only pressure you should put on yourself is to finish. Not, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Am I copying Neil Gaiman or what? Just do it and get it done. What do you say? He says,
thumbs up.
Dab.
I want to hear the Bat James voice.
Bat James!
Yeah. There is power there.
It's good. Good stuff.
Next Batman.
I've done it a lot. It's getting really easy.
So we have another question. Can you read that, James?
What to expect the first year or so of writing?
So you just got started. I'm a new writer. I'm trying hard. I want to publish something. I want to get something done. I want to get it out in the world. What's that first year like? You start taking it seriously. What should you be doing? Bethany, what do you got to say?
Just form a habit, learn to plot a little bit, and then this is probably the hardest, but start slowly getting comfortable sharing your work. I know new writers are like, no, it's mine, and write until it's as good as you can make it, and then maybe share the first chapter with someone, or maybe share a great scene with someone. Like, share your best work and just get comfortable with it, because I've seen some writers wait years and years and years before sharing their work, or they don't and they publish it, and those like negative reviews just kill them. And so like start making some writer friends or swap some work, because critique partners are so great. It's like having a knockoff editor that actually knows what they're talking about at times, and it's a lot of fun. So get comfortable with that. Know you're going to write some bad stuff that's never going to see the light of day, and that's okay. It's practice. You're allowed to do that. But for that first year, just do it. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And you don't have to share your whole book. If you don't want to, totally fine. But maybe like your favorite part of your book, just dip your toe in the water of getting some feedback. Send it to someone that you respect and will be nice. That's all I got.
Danny?
Yeah, to add on to that, I actually kind of like the idea of sending your work to someone you barely even know, because they will not sugarcoat anything. They will tell you exactly what's wrong with it, and they don't care how you feel about it. And if that's going to happen, know that every little bit of feedback you get, no matter whatever the package is that it's delivered in, try and draw from that feedback exactly what you need to learn, because it's all steps to becoming much better. Benjamin says that everything is going to take a lot longer than you think it will. I think that could apply to your writing ability. It might take you a while to get good, but writing the story, I finished the first draft, Voice of the Broken. I was surprised at how quick I wrote that.
Yeah.
So, but I think you've got to understand that it takes time. Like you say, it's a skill. Like most things, it takes time to learn. So allow yourself that time, but don't slow down. That's what I'd say that would happen in the first year.
Z, you've been doing this a minute. What was it like when you first started trying to like consider that you weren't just writing for you, that you were like making a product and you wanted people to see it?
Yeah, so just really focus on the end goal. So like figure out where you want to go with your writing, and then sort of step back and figure out how you're going to get there. Break it down in baby-sized sort of steps. Just make it really manageable and easy for yourself. And yeah, like both those answers were amazing. I think they're both really great answers. I think they're, yeah.
No, that's a good answer too. Seeing the goal, like Bethany said, that definitely makes a difference. I think you'd expect to go through some hard times too. Now, when I say hard times, is that in a year, a lot can happen. 2 years ago, I lost my mother. I didn't write a damn thing around that time. There's going to be really difficult times. It's sometimes people use writing as a means to escape. Sometimes, like I did, I just stopped because it was the last thing on my mind. And it was the last thing on my mind because I had to do a lot of organisation for the funeral and that sort of thing. It's a horrible thing. So expect there's going to be setbacks. Don't punish yourself for those setbacks, especially when you lost a loved one. But don't give up overall, because 12 months is still a fair bit of time. 3 months later, I was playing around with ideas and writing ideas down and back into it again. So that's my little extra little bit.
I think James has something he would like to say. Jamesy?
Do you know what me and my friends are doing outside?
No. What are they doing outside?
Piper has a bunch of boxes we can use, and we're building a box for it.
A box fort, he says.
That sounds like way too much fun.
Dab. All right, go play.
Yeah.
Love you, son.
There you go.
He didn't have any writing advice. Anyway,
Hey,
so,
can I add one more thing to that last question? Can I just keep talking?
I can't even remember what we're talking about. You guys are so interesting. I'm just going to go.
First year. What do we expect in the first year?
So we've been talking about getting feedback. I was the worst human on earth at asking for feedback. No one even knew I was writing. I'd written probably almost 1 million words of fiction before I told anybody that I was writing. So,
I think we're sort of focusing a bit on the difficulties.
So this is my first year where I've really had decided that I want people to know what I'm doing and that I want to start getting my stuff out there. So I'm in it right now. So I don't know whether I know what to tell people what to expect. All I know is I did a lot of hard work before I started doing this. So I didn't start out of the gate trying to get feedback. I started out of the gate trying to figure out what I was doing and what it meant and how to build it and what it was. So I would tell people that it's okay to wait a little while to start trying to get your stuff out there. It's okay to talk to some people that know about writing and get a mentor or a critique partner or someone that can kind of help guide you through those first steps. And then do way more research than me when you get started. So I didn't know anything about marketing myself. I didn't know anything about social media. I have to ask Danny how to put stories on Instagram. Like, I don't know how to do anything. I'm completely and utterly hopeless at almost everything. But I'm like really good dancer. But my point is that first year I put on my bulletproof skin and said, okay, I'm gonna start showing these stories to people. And whatever they say is whatever they say. And if they say it's bad, instead of being pissed about it, I can just say, okay, now I know something needs to be fixed. Because before I was just floating in space, not being sure that I knew what I was doing. So if it's your first year getting your stuff out there, and you're going to take some knocks, because if you ask for criticism, you may get it. And then you need to start thinking of that as, if you were walking around with a piece of toilet paper stuck to the heel of your shoe, you'd want to know. Or if you had some toothpaste in your corner of your mouth, or that weird stuff that's in the corner of your eyes when you wake up. You guys get that, right? It's not just
conjunctivitis.
Anyway, if you had that on you, you would want someone to tell you. I don't know why I did that. So think of it like that. So when you ask a critique partner to give you criticism, or if you put your story as online and people read it and send you messages and some of them aren't good, instead of thinking that person's a jerk, unless they're being a jerk, in which case, but if it's just good constructive criticism, think of it like somebody told you to wipe the corner of your mouth and get the crap off your face, that they're trying to help you. They're trying to help you look good and put your best foot forward. And also consider the quality of the criticism by the quality of the writing of the person giving it to you. If you send it to someone who doesn't know anything and maybe doesn't even really read, and they say this sucks, you can feel pretty safe just ignoring the crap out of it.
If
I would want to read somebody's stuff before I ask them what they thought of mine.
If we're circling back to just the first year, you're probably not going to have like a full length anything to share, and that's totally fine. I'm just saying maybe like get comfortable with the idea, because it could be quite rough that first go around. But if we're going down the road of beta readers, I have tons of video ideas for that, and how you want multiple beta readers and they are not the end all be all, because sometimes they just put their own opinions in there that don't have anything to do with anything. But yeah, for the first year, just get stuff done, make friends. I think that's one thing that I missed out on, was because I kept it a secret, and I would have loved to have made some more friends sooner. Like, that would have been fun.
I agree.
I was horrible at all of the things you just said. Like, I didn't want
I'm not saying I was great either. This is past Bethany's thinking.
All of you here in this stream with me are inspirations to me. Like, you have yourself out there in big ways. Like, Z is all over the place. I found this thing called Talk Tick or something like that. I don't know what it is. All over it.
Toxic.
It's famous. I mean, there's like a star on the TikTok Walk of Fame for her. And like, I'm super impressed with that, because though I may seem like an extrovert, I'm really not. Like, I keep myself to myself. I'm just a weirdo. But now I'm doing it in public. But you guys, big inspiration to me, because I like see the way that you guys put yourself out there, and it seems so effortless. I have to ask questions all the time. Danny's probably sick of getting Facebook posts from me. I'm like, how do you do this? How do you turn the thing on with the thing? Because I don't know.
Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Because as far as I'm concerned, I've said this a number of times in the last couple of days, I want to be the friend I wish I had to everybody else.
Oh.
So if you contact me,
likable lessons or something. It's frustrating.
I'm just awesome. But if you message me, you got a problem. Like, I don't care if you message me 1,000 times and you need to sort something out. I'll help you, because that's one thing I was going to say. Bethany touched on it a bit. Is in the first year, if you decide that you want to get to know other writers, you don't even know. Kent didn't know that there's this huge, warm community out there waiting for you. They want to support you and talk to you, and they give a damn about what you're writing. They give a damn about how you feel about it. So I'd encourage you in that first year to, if you want to write and you want to keep it to yourself for a bit, go for it. But get onto Facebook groups, get onto Instagram, start talking to people, ask questions, because questions are one of the most powerful motivators out there. And get to know people, build your network, and all of a sudden you've got people there ready to read your work. You have a problem, you can talk to them. I think it's brilliant. In fact, this is the best community I've ever come across in my life. So
yeah, I suck at all that.
Well, like, real life example, one of my books has a lot to do with like dads and father-son relationships, and like, I'm not a parent, and so I'm really excited to give it to like Kent and Danny to see their thoughts. Am I way off base because I'm writing from the perspective of something that I have no experience from? And it's just fun to get people from every walk of life. Like, it's very exciting to see what they write, their perspective on things, and it's just exciting. Like, once you finish your first draft and you know that like extreme high it gives you, like when Danny's like, oh, I finally finished, and like Kent's like, oh, we finished, it was so exciting, and you want to have your friends there with you through it. And I missed out on that for a while because I was just too shy, and I had that imposter syndrome so bad. So like, I know Don's like, oh, should I maybe make an Authortube channel? Yes, do it. I've not had one bad experience. Granted, I've only been here for like 3 months, but still.
Yeah, but look how many friends you've made in those 3 months. Look how much support you've got.
Shout out to Charlotte, by the way. So I have a question for Z, because Z, you're probably out of the four of us the quietest of the bunch in here, at least. But you really have a presence out there. Like, you're all over the place, and it's all awesome. So like, you're like an extroverted introvert or something. Like, I have trouble getting a beat on you. You're really interesting. So what was it like for you to like you're everywhere. You're on everything. What's it like? Tell us, Z.
Yeah, that's part of a plan. I wanted to sort of cast a wide net across different social platforms and then feed them to my tappers. So yeah, it's all quite calculated, and I wanted the content to be as good as I could make it as possible, so that I could sort of hook them into being curious about the story and then going to Tapas to read the book. Yeah.
Worked on me.
For a moment, then it sounded like you said, I cast a net over everybody so I can feed them tapas. That's how you socialize. Cook for everybody. Job done.
Just witchcraft, basically. Just.
So you guys all thought about this before you started, huh? That's really cool.
Yeah, the power of research.
Yeah, I did research. I figured out how to turn YouTube on.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was such a thing as Authortube.
I was on Authortube before I knew it was Authortube.
I didn't watch YouTube.
No.
My daughter told me about it.
We all need an Angelina in our life.
Oh, you can't have her. She's mine. I told her she can live with me forever. And she said, okay. I'm like, yeah, we'll see. But hey, I didn't do any research, and half of the reason things have gone like pretty well for me getting my stuff out in public is Danny Ranger. So I'm just gonna give him all the credit, because the only reason I'm doing this right now is because of Danny. But I got one more question before we just open it up to anybody that wants to ask us some questions, or we just start shooting the crap. I got one more for you. And Z, you're gonna be first. It's gonna be you.
Be prepared.
I want to know if you could go back right now to when you were a brand new writer and just grab yourself, just sink your fingers into the thick red locks and shake yourself and say, don't do this. What was the worst mistakes you made when you got started?
Not following through, definitely. So just pushing through that barrier of like the middle of the story and getting to the ending, because I needed to train myself how to write a novel in the first place, and that just took years. It took until I was 20 years old before I could actually do it. So it would have been good to start that earlier at 12, like Angelina. Yeah.
That's kind of funny because, like, in a weird way, you remind me of Angelina a little bit. You could have some of the same mannerisms. She's So would you say that if you could go back, so say you started over right now, what would be the first thing you did different? Like if you could just start from blank slate, you haven't written a word yet, what would you do different?
Oh God, everything and nothing.
Hey!
Hey, Charlie.
What's up, Chuck?
I'm sorry to tell you this, Charlie, but you interrupted Z. How dare you?
It's good. I didn't know where I was going, so this is fantastic. So.
Very good.
Thank you, Charlie.
See you, mate. What I miss?
Nothing. Z is waiting to speak, and we are all waiting with bated breath.
All right, let's hear it.
Oh God, I've actually forgotten the question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't worry. I can just re-ask it. I'm good like that.
Okay.
I don't know what accent that was. So the question is, you go back to square one. You can start all over, which your actual original answer to this was really interesting. You go everything and nothing, which I thought there was going to be really something good come out of that. If you go back to you haven't written a word, but now you know everything you know now, and you're going to start all over. What do you do different?
Oh gosh, yes, good question. Very good question. Does anyone else want to jump in first?
I'll jump in. I'll go in. The number one mistake that I made when I was writing my very first serious attempt of a novel was thinking it was good, because it wasn't. And if you write something that is good, first go, you are not human. There's something going on there. So I thought I'd written something good. When I sent it to people and they destroyed it, it destroyed me. That was very naive of me. Now I understand that the first draft is like, I always liken it because it makes perfect sense. I always liken the first draft to the line work of an art piece. Now, Z, you would not send just the line work or the basis of a picture to a friend and say, what do you think of this, would you?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like if you just drew, like if you're going to draw a character and you just drew the outline of their head and just a rough sort of shape of their body, and then send it to someone and said, how good is this?
Yeah, it would have to be in some sort of neatness. Yeah.
They'd have to see at least a projection of the final product, wouldn't they?
Definitely, yes.
That's right. So the first draft is not that. The first draft I've learned is really, Kent and I spoke about this earlier. I love this. It's like riding like a bull in a china shop, going full ham, destroying the page, throwing keyboards against the wall. Or maybe not that bad, but still getting in there and just writing with no limitations to get your ideas down. Because ever since I finished Voice of the Broken's first draft, the truth of the story has come to me. I've been thinking about it.
I love that.
The real reason I'm writing the story has come to me. So that first draft is not a reflection of the final product. So therefore, that comes back to also like comparing yourself to other people's work. It's not a reflection of the final product. That is 10 drafts later or 5 drafts later, that published book you bought and is amazing. So that would be what I'd do differently.
Hang on, Dan, before you go into that. Dan, can I call you Dan? Dan?
Danny, Daniel.
Can I ask you something about that?
Dan, the man, yeah.
You wouldn't show somebody a first draft, and I encourage people not to show other people their first draft. But there are situations in which I would share a first draft with a close friend and critique partner to ensure that I was going in a good direction.
That's different. That's right.
Not all the time. It's not my way. It's not what I always do. So sometimes maybe if you have a lot of doubt and you're seeking some kind of course correction, because Bethany did that recently, and the way she talked about it actually kind of changed my mind about things. She talked about talking with her critique partner. I actually thought about that a lot, Bethany.
Well, my critique partner and I are like,
Danny will leave because I'm so boring.
I don't care what you're going to say.
Maybe
I'm just putting the fan on.
Occasionally could be a time in which you could share a piece of a first draft with somebody.
especially if you've been with your critique partner long enough and you can say like, yo, this is really rough. Give me some grace. They're going to overlook all of your little grammar and cliches because that's later down the road. And you can say, I just need you to look at the bones and tell me if this is going anywhere. Because there was a point in my story where I was like, something is not working. I've given it space. I cannot figure out what is just off about this. So I told my critique partner, first draft, sorry. And they read through it really fast. And he was like, oh, this is actually really good, but your narration sucks because you gave everything away at the beginning. And I was like, that's it. Perfect. Totally fine. Now, if I had never worked with this person before, I don't think I would have been comfortable doing that. So there's always an exception to the rule. But generally, don't share your first draft. But if you've worked with that person before and you have a specific reason for it, why not? Like, if you don't care about that, like, go for it. But I generally encourage you to do it with someone who knows you well enough to look past your just terrible
your
mess.
Advice is to do it with people you know. Sorry.
Gotta put things in context there, but
anyway, okay,
I
Dan.
also kind of feel like though, like if I've got a mess of a section of my book that I want people to read, I still want to tidy it up a bit because I feel like that would be like test driving a car over speed bumps. I'd want to smooth it out a bit, make it easy enough for them to get what I'm trying to do.
yeah.
Okay, Dan. I don't want to call you Dan all of a sudden. I've never called you Dan ever.
Don, in, Dick, whatever you
If
want.
you could go back and grab yourself by the beard, assuming that you had a beard in the time period of which I'm speaking.
Didn't you just come out with a beard?
No, I can't. If you could go back and tell yourself one thing right now, knowing everything you knew, if you go back, what would you say? What would you say to Danny who just started writing?
I answered that.
Answer it again. Better.
I'd say, like what I just said there as well, but I also say, look, people come up with an idea for a story, right? And the idea sticks in their mind because it's peculiar. And I think that is maybe the beginnings of an idea. But then what I've learned from you is that what drives any story, whether it's sci-fi, romance, any story, is the characters that are in it and the conflict they face, whether it's internal or external, and the choices they make. I think you use a term called value shift a bit there. So I would probably say to myself, look, what do these people want? What do these people need? And why? Figure that out first.
That is freaking amazing the way you said that. So I'm always
Stop talking about me like that. My beard's going to get too big.
I'm
always an Afro beard here, man.
I'm always terrified, and this is something Danny and me were talking about. I'm always terrified that I'm going to go too dorky story nerd on people when I talk about value shifts and inciting incidents, progressive complications, crisis climax and resolution, and all that stuff, because it's just names for stuff that you might already know what it is. So sometimes just because I give it a name, people think it's kind of corporate and Nazi and something like that, that it's like rules you have to follow. But it isn't rules you have to follow. It's things that are. There must be value shifts in scenes. There must be a value at stake in a novel. If there isn't, you haven't written one. You've written an instruction manual or potentially a long description. And it's something, I don't know, Z, I don't know if you're familiar with this concept, but in every scene that you have up on Tapas, there is a clear value at stake and a clear value shift every time. You may not know you're doing it, or you may. We haven't really talked about it. I wish we had. But it's there every time, and it carries you through the scene. Yeah, like, you know, we could have discussed this beforehand before I start saying stuff, but that's not my way. All I'm saying is, like, when you read good writing, and Z has got some good writing. When you read good writing, once you know what that is and you recognize it, you can tell why a scene that you wrote doesn't work, because nothing changes. Nobody makes a choice. Nothing happened. And occasionally you'll read some very well-selling stories where nothing happens. I would rather sell one book that had all this stuff intact than make $10 million. Okay, wait a minute. Maybe not 10 million, but I would rather get that right for me than win an award or make a bunch of money. Really. And I think that understanding that, I don't know if you can start understanding that, but I think that at some point it's like a magnifying glass. You can hold up to your scenes and chapters and say, did something change? Did anybody decide anything? And once you start to feel that stuff, and once you start to understand it and recognize it, there's no going back. Everything just gets better.
So you got me thinking about wants and needs when we're talking about it. I didn't quite understand what each was, and I did a bit of research on it. And one thing, and I said it to you before, one thing that stuck with me is the want is the lie that they believe in. And it could be perfectly reasonable. It could be a man who just wants to live happily with his wife, but there's always going to be an external force that's going to conflict with that. And now I've learned that. That's something I definitely want to go back in time and tell myself, is this is things you need to know. This is the difference. You can even look at someone like Ebenezer Scrooge. His want was greed. He wanted to be rich. And you know why? Because he grew up poor. But his need was, he needed companionship. He needed friendship, because people hated him and he needed to change. So I've been learning about this and applying it to movies and books and stuff I know about. And thank goodness, because if I didn't know it, it would be a terrible story.
Bethany, what do you think?
About the original question, or
time machine? You got a time machine, you can go back.
I would tell myself that my true strength is with short stuff. I'm going all the way back to 6th grade when you had those stupid writing tests where they gave you 3 prompts. You had to write all you could, a great story, and then random strangers would see it and I got terrible marks on it, and it was just because I'm like, they don't get it, and they didn't appreciate the way that I structured the story and all of that. But I would go back and tell myself that you will improve your craft more when you write your short stuff, and then you can move to longer stuff, because I had the most fun writing some of the shorter stuff. I mean, you guys read Coffee with the Devil. Like, that was fun. I enjoyed that. And now I can write bigger stuff because I've had that boost of confidence. Instead, I wrote 3 full-length manuscripts that will never see the light of day, which, granted, was great practice, but I just really grew so much more when I got into writing shorter stuff. And I kind of wish that I had done that sooner. But in the end, I'm glad that I had that practice. I don't know, it's a double-edged sword there, but I would have told myself you don't have to write a full-length book. You can make someone mad and angry, or make someone cry with, a 1,000-word story. So I don't know. My first story was about a garbage man, so take that with a grain of salt.
So, Z, you've had a minute to think. If I can give you the time machine now, and you could go back.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'd study story structure a lot earlier, because that was a main weakness, and it took me a long time to figure it out. So it was a lot of trial and error. So definitely studying story structure, and just start picking apart my favorite books first and figuring out why they were working and why I liked them. So definitely, focus on the story structure.
You've got some structure. I don't know how long ago the stuff up on Tapas was written. How long ago was that?
Oh God, when I posted it, or
when you wrote it?
So it's morphed over years. It's a really old draft, and it doesn't even resemble what it started out as at this point. So I've been rewriting it over and over. Yeah.
So if you weren't studying story structure then, you were kind of a natural, because a lot of the elements are already there.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Well, you're welcome. So, it's some people are naturals and don't even know what they're doing, and I'll explain it to them. We'll break it down, and they're just looking at me like I'm crazy, and I'm like, never mind, don't even listen, just keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm not trying to break it. Ain't broke. I'm not trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not me. I have to work really hard to make sure everything's interesting.
I do that later. When I'm writing it, I don't put too much pressure on myself in the first draft to have everything figured out and a turning point in every scene and all that good stuff. I want to, but I think it's just so important to get to the end.
I also, I believe, if I was I just got a message that scared the crap out of me.
It was a message. I get it. It was a message.
I wasn't farting, I promise. But yeah, if I go back, that's absolutely destroyed my train of thought. What were we talking about again? I've been a natural, right? So if I was a natural, I don't care, because I don't believe there's an end point. I believe improvement is continuous. So I'd want to learn as much as I could learn. If I can make a great story even greater, I will.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is never stop learning. There's so many craft books, there's so many master classes. You don't need a degree in English or a degree in creative writing. There's so many resources out there, cheap resources. Just keep learning and growing. And the best way is just to write. You'll get better.
Yeah. But I would say every once in a while, don't do what I did. Put your periscope up out of the cave you live in. And I don't think caves have periscopes. But mixing metaphors is okay if you're me. And don't write in a vacuum for 5 years like I did. I could have got better faster if I'd started putting my stuff out, because I didn't even have a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to whether or not what I was doing was any good at all. So some of the older stories that I thought were absolute trash, I've recently let people read. I think at least 2 of you in here have read Lydia. So I thought it was absolute garbage and tossed it. And only recently.
That hurts my heart. I can't believe you said that.
What?
That oh my God.
I almost just tossed it. Like, it's fine. That was genius. Sorry, continue.
I've never genius.
You did a Stephen King.
Genius.
Same sentence.
You did a Stephen King. You did that with Carrie.
I'll send it to you, Z. Sorry. But
Oh yes, read it, Z. Read it.
But all I'm saying is, my point is, but man, if I'd known I could fish for compliments like that, I could have completely rephrased.
I just can't believe you said you were gonna throw it away.
I was gonna toss it in the garbage. It was 100% truth, and that was one of the first things. By the way, that's one of the first things I ever wrote. So, it was right after I finished my first novel. But my point is, if I hadn't been writing in a vacuum, maybe somebody could have told me I was on to something or on the right track. That could have prevented me from writing the next novel where I tried to do everything different, that came out 240,000 words and that no one shall ever read, because I didn't have a sense of direction. There was no compass to point me in any direction, a critique partner or some buddies. If I had a Z, a Danny, or a Bethany, maybe I could have gone, oh, I shouldn't change everything and write a giant pile of stinking stuff. I just saw Angie's little pink butt go by the door there. Anyway, by the way, I highly recommend you wear Iron Man pajama pants at all times. You don't have those, do you? Some people are just, higher class than others. Stop laughing at me, Z.
I'm pretty sure I got the loudest socks out of everyone here. Look, go right back.
He's going to show his feet.
Wow.
Some countries, your feet is an insult. I've spent a lot of time in those countries. Okay, one last question. I'm a new author, and I don't know why I can't just ask the question. I have to do a little
set it up.
Do a dance. I'm super indirect. Characterization. How do you make characters that don't suck and aren't just a flat piece of cardboard with nothing to them? And then how do you show that in your writing without a bunch of telling?
There is so much to say on that.
Well, start saying it, brother.
I think the obvious one is you got to make them flawed. Absolutely make them flawed. No one is perfect. I think you also need to make it that there is a conflict within them. One could be driven by their own desires. One could be driven by what's right. At times, these characters might make the wrong decision. That's part of, I guess, having flaws. So that's probably about as much as I can say on that, because I haven't dived really deep into it, other than wants and needs, whys. I think there's also there's got to be some leverage to their goals. So I mentioned Ebenezer Scrooge earlier. He wanted to have a lot of money because he grew up poor. Someone like Thanos in Avengers, he wanted to wipe out half of the population of the universe because the exact issue he's trying to avoid happened in his past. So I think that might be a key thing for characterization. What do you reckon?
Well, you hit the first nail on the head right in the beginning, although I call it the Superman complex. So the unflawed character that it's hard to make interesting, but there is a way to even make those invincible, implacable people interesting, is by the reactions of the people around them. But there's always a way. So I have a Superman complex. I have an invincible guy in my first book, and I think it's the best thing I ever wrote. But it's the reactions of the people around him that make him interesting. But I'm going to go ahead and do my turn here. I was trying to go last to put everybody else first, but now I'm just going to go because I'm super excited.
I'm into
So stop laughing at me, Z. Am I funny to you? I'm sorry, man. I have to.
Laugh at you.
I've never got. Just if everybody wants to know why I'm messing with Z all the time, I've never got to talk to her. I'm super excited to talk to her. That's all this. I apologize, Z. She'll probably never talk to me again after this. Anyway, I look really weird when I get that close. Anyway, so characterization. So people talk about writing these huge character backstories and stuff like that, and I think there is some utility in that, in understanding where they come from. and what they care about. But what Danny was talking about came, you know, and we had conversations about this. I think about wants and needs. I think they're more important than their past. I don't think that everyone is defined by their past. I hope not, because I'm in trouble. But I think that the most important thing in characterization is to show their character through action. So you can decide you want your character to be a certain way, but it's what they do that defines who they are. It isn't the thought bubble inside their head that sometimes we use in free and direct style, like, or in first person. You need to design actions that create characterization. So if you say, my heroine's one tough cookie who doesn't take crap off no one. Cool. You need to show her being a tough cookie and not taking crap. You have to put it in there. It has to be in there. It can't just be a voice in the head. It can't just be a concept, and you definitely can't just describe them that way. So it has to be done. And I don't want to get into show versus tell because that's a deep, dark rabbit hole. But what I do want to say is that I try to develop my characters more through the actions they're going to take. And I think of this as reverse engineering. I don't say in advance, this person's like this. I think about what the story needs to make something happen in a particular scene or in a turning point or something like that. And like, what would make this interesting? What kind of conflict would make this interesting? And then I design the character around that. Otherwise, if you pre-design your characters and then put them into the world, you can run into an incredible amount of trouble because they will be at odds with your plot all the time. You're like, well, my character wouldn't do that. They can do whatever you want them to do. If you design them to fit that awesome turning point in the story or that awesome conflict in the story, then you're way ahead of the game. If you create the character in advance, which I'm not saying you shouldn't do, but if you create the character in advance, they can be a lead weight around your neck. Like if the story needs to go in a certain direction and they wouldn't do this or they wouldn't do that, you may have to come up with some convoluted explanation why character X suddenly went against their personality. That's something I learned the really hard way. I had a whole book go wrong because I couldn't figure out that I could just change what that person was like. I talked way too much. Somebody else talked.
I guess for me, I have like two like guidelines that I really abide by, and one of them is like at the beginning before your inciting incident, kind of just show the reader what your main character will never do, and then put them in that box and see how they'll react to it. So like, say your main character will, I don't know, never eat meat, but now they're starving on an island. Like, how are they going to deal with that conflict and that moral dilemma? So that's one way that I like to think about it, where I'm like, I show the readers like, this is my character's hard line, and now they need to cross that line. How do they react to it? And then the other thing is, obviously people like to relate to their characters and stuff, and so nothing bothers me more when there's just like an arbitrary villain out there just being evil to be evil. And I'm like, I kind of want to get behind the villain. Like, the best stories are like when you're like sort of like, I kind of see where the villain's coming from, and I'm not really on their side, but they have some points. Their method is flawed. We can maybe look past that, but I get it. And so you want to create like just a desire from every character. But if you have a villain, man, just make sure that they have like a solid reason. They're not just an evil being to be an evil being. But one of my books, I have a really flawed character, super unlikable, and he's just this jerk from a really dark. And the more you get to know him, you're like, wow, he had a really hard life. That sucks. But he did this thing that basically he did a bad thing to get out of a bad situation, and then you're leaving the reader to think what was worse. Should he have stayed in that bad situation, or should he have done that bad thing to leave that situation? And I like to play with the reader's emotions like that.
I love this comment from Madison Wheatley. Most villains think they're the hero. Everybody thinks they're the hero. Everybody's the hero of their own story in some kind of way. I mean, we all think we're living behind our eyes. It isn't true, but we do think that. And every one of my villains has always been, except one, because he's crazy and he knows he's crazy, which is a very weird conundrum for a character. He knows he's evil. But every other villain I've ever written, and I've written a lot because I love them, are absolutely convinced that everything will be fixed if they get their way. And that if only they could get all these other idiots to understand the world like they do. That was like a Thanos Scotland move. That everything is going to be okay. And I think that is a critical point. Thank you, Madison, for bringing it up. Z, what you got?
I love that point about the villain, especially when like I try to construct my like protagonist and villain to sort of be really like butting against each other. So you need to give them like an opposite goal to the and weaknesses that sort of pair with the protagonist, if that makes sense. So yeah, but yeah, just giving the character like things they really love or people they really love and they're really passionate about, just trying to make them a little bit real, basically, and something that the reader can connect to. Yeah.
I know this is about starting out as a writer, but let me give you just a little story nerdness. So the hero should embody the theme. The villain should embody the anti-theme. They should be the polarities, the polar opposites between which the tension is. And it sounds obvious when you say it, but if you're not careful and you don't think about it, you can lose your way through the myriad scenes and chapters that you have to get through to get to the end. There needs to remain that dynamic tension between them, but they both have to have a point. The anti-theme can't be, I hate everybody. That's not enough. There has to be, nihilism is more complicated than just that. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I agree. This kind of goes back to what I said, that there's got to be something usually in their past that leverages what they're doing. I think probably some of the best villains that I can think of, some of them do start out to be genuinely good, and they get so driven, so committed to their mission that it drives them crazy, and they are then willing to do things that they shouldn't do to achieve it. That's probably about all I got on that.
All right. Anybody else got any other advice for early writers? And I'm going to see if anybody in the chat has any questions for any of the writers with their faces in your face.
Don't be shy.
I think the only thing I have to say is maybe find some Facebook groups. That's always fun because you can maybe share some of your writing. Or I just joined one for cover designers where artists post covers and you can like bid on their covers. And I'm nowhere near that stage, but it's been fun. So join Facebook groups if you want to just passively learn more and meet more people. Okay, that's it.
To add on to that, whoever you are, you're welcome to message me anytime.
God, Danny,
we're here waiting.
Cool all the time, man. Pisses me off. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, be thinking of them, throw them in the chat, and we'll talk about it. And now, I've been planning to put Bethany on the spot all night. So I have been going over in my mind like a problem that I have, and I'm really scared to work with editors. And one of the problems that I have, I'm scared of developmental editors because they're going to suggest big changes. So I thought I'd dip my toe in the water and make it a little easier. So what I'm going to start out with is I'm going to hire Bethany, if she's willing to take the job, to edit my short story, Lydia, and then I'm going to post it up on the results up on my website. So if you're willing to take the job, Bethany, I'd like to hire you to copy edit that book or that story. It's not a book, it's a story. What do you think?
That would be tons of fun. We can discuss it later, but I can already tell like you have enough experience that when you're looking for developmental editors for your main stuff, you really won't need to be nervous. I think you know enough of the lingo to find the good ones. So don't be nervous.
But see, I've read all the books and I can say all the stuff that doesn't always mean, anything at all. So I know enough to know that I don't know everything. So
You're in the forest.
Yeah, well, I'm scared. I'm not gonna lie. Z, have you ever worked with editors before?
No, I haven't. Yeah, I'll be interested to see this.
So does it make you nervous?
Not really. Because I want to get better, so I'm always happy to get some criticism. It's great. It's a gift. So yeah.
So I'm the chicken shit. Is what you're telling? I mean, no, yeah, that's it. I'm the chicken shit.
Wait, didn't you have like a okay experience with a developmental editor? Like you could have probably given it to a friend and they would have given you the same feedback. So maybe you've just been burned and you're like, I don't want to do that again, but I know I got to put myself out there like that.
I got burned because I got agented immediately on my first try. I'm not going to bring up the name of the agency because it's a very big one, and you never know what the future holds. But I queried the first novel I ever wrote, and I got, I think it was 10 full reads back on the first round of querying. So it
doesn't happen. If anyone's not aware of like traditional publishing, that does not happen.
What?
No, it did. I don't even know how I got out of the slush pile. I went to Query Shark website. That's how I learned to write my queries, and it's really good. So you should go check it out if you're into traditional publishing. But so apparently I was doing something potentially right. I don't know, but whatever it was for my first novel, Children of Doom. Also, most of the time they won't read manuscripts over 120,000 words, and it was 180,000 words, and 10 agents read it. So, but I got burned by the process. The process destroyed me. And all of my confidence in traditional publishing vanished in a year of nothing happening and going back and forth and them telling me we'd have to wait 2 years to bring it to market. 2 years to even start the editorial process. And then we'd have to time bringing it to market and we'd see what other books were doing what that year. And I just sat there going, I can't do this. So ever since then, dealing with the professional side of writing has been terrifying for me. And I need to start dipping my toe into those waters because we got to do it. And I'm willing to pay. So I'm scared. I'm not going to lie. I'm terrified.
It's intimidating. Your huge work in progress, especially, like a developmental editor could suggest an entire narration change, and that would require you to rewrite your 180,000 word book, and it would probably be better for it, but that's a really daunting task. They're gonna say, you might just eliminate this character. They might say, hey, this is a really great story for middle grade, rewrite it and cut 80,000 words. And a good editor should explain why these things. They're going to talk about marketing. They're going to talk about just overall themes and tones and why it fits for middle grade versus not. And then it's up to you to make that call, but chances are you should, and always get a second opinion if it's a huge thing like that through friends or critique partners. But it's intimidating because you're paying someone to rip apart your little baby just to make it better. It's tough. But
I'm still scared. That didn't help at all. So thanks.
On the plus side, in 3 months, I'll be looking for a couple of editors. I don't want my friends to edit my books because some of my friends are on one side of the spectrum where they're too nice. And a couple of my editor friends, they're going to shame me to tears. So I want to find a nice middle ground, someone I don't know super well. But I'm kind of starting to feel that I need to find the right one. And are they going to make me question everything I've written before? It's tough.
So, yeah. So I'm looking on Reedy for developmental editors, but I thought it would be neat. Well, I give some business to a friend, and second of all, to just try once to let somebody mess with my stuff because I've never let anybody do it before, and I think some of it's going to be hard. And I think it's probably time. I'm always telling everybody, I think it's time to just do it anyway. And I think why better? And I think that Bethany, as we do this, we can talk about. And because I do that too every year. And I really think you need to like kind of document my discomfort with the process and be transparent about it. Maybe even share about it. We can work with that for you.
And for sure, I'm curious to see where your big book goes. How you go about that?
I don't know what I'm gonna do. Z, are you anything you're looking to send to an editor soon?
No, not soon. It's not. Yeah, it's not me. Yeah.
So I think it's important to set Whoa, there's like a robot online with us now. Really cool. I like robots.
Earlier, so
Hey, sound guy, what's that? But I think it's important to set deadlines and to I think it's important to just say I'm going to have this done by then. I'm going to get an editor by today. And that was really hard for me to do because I just kept churning books without doing it at all. I think he kind of did that too. What do you guys think? Do you think you should set deadlines?
that's tough.
I don't know what's going on with the sound.
Okay, well, before we start the robot uprising, I think we'll just wrap it up. Because you don't want to mess with Skynet. It never works out. I want to say thanks to everybody, Bethany, Z, and Danny for coming on. Thanks to everybody that watched. And we'll do this again.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good night, everybody.